Hello and welcome to Visiting Dugout, a Fans First Sports Network production. I am Crystal O'Keefe, podcaster, managing editor, writer, everything for Southside Sox. And today I have Andy Brown back again this season to chat about the Astros. Andy, for those new, please reintroduce yourself.
Hi. I'm a lifelong Astros fan. I grew up in Austin, Texas, and I moved to Chicago actually about 10 years ago for school. And I've been here ever since, and I love it. But of course, I'm here to talk about my favorite team, which is the Astros, and just what all has been going on and going wrong this season.
Yeah, you're almost like a Packers fan in Chicago. Like, it's bold to
Mm,
be an Astros fan, especially after that World
yeah.
Series.
Yeah. It was a while ago. I think it hasn't been so bad the last couple seasons to go back there. I would say 2021 when the White Sox were very good. It was contentious to be there, but yeah, I don't know. That World Series, it's crazy to think about, but that World Series almost 20 years ago.
I know.
So yeah, I know everyone remembers it, but yeah, it was a while ago.
Yeah.
Many new eras have come and gone since.
I was a freshman in college during that
Yeah,
World Series, so it makes
I
me
was
feel
uh I
ancient.
was 10 years old, and it was it was like my second or third year ever following the team. So I was like, oh my gosh, like yeah, we can get back to the World Series. Like that's easy. Like I've seen this before. And then it took 12 years for them to get back after that, and there were many bad years in between the two World Series appearances. So I've really seen it all with this team.
Yeah, you have. So, no longer talking about history. What is new with this Houston Astros team?
Well, gosh, so much is new, I guess, or so much is not new, I guess. The roster from the last two seasons is basically the same. The core has not changed a ton. A lot of the same guys who were there are there. And I think what the Astros are running into this year, and just to timestamp this, we're speaking on Sunday the 16th. So by the time this comes out, there will have been another game. But
Mhm.
um, it's just been kind of a nonstop grind to try to climb out of an early hole. So sorry, my computer's making noise. So as some of you may know, the Astros started 7-19, capped off by a sweep at Wrigley Field. I was in attendance for all three games. It was awesome.
Oh, good.
Um, but yeah, so sweep at Wrigley Field, and at that point, 7-19. I don't even know what that projects out at 162, but it's not good. And it's just a very, people say you can't win a pennant in April, but you can lose it. And I think the Astros are experimenting with that. They're getting very close to experimenting with that this year.
Mhm.
They started so poorly, and since then they've gone 25-20, which is not a terrible record. If your team started 25-20, you would actually be pretty happy about that.
Yeah.
It's very easy to look at that in the macro and think, okay, well, things are trending in the right direction, and that is about a 90 win pace. But if they continued at that pace, they would end up with about 82 wins, which is not enough. But it's actually not that far away from what has been good enough to make a playoff spot in the last couple of years, especially with the extended wild card. I think the Diamondbacks only won like 84 last year and got in.
Mhm.
But regardless, this is new territory for the Astros. I mean, the Astros have been dominating the AL West for the better part of the last decade. That's no longer the case. So, from a macro sense, yes, they're trending in the right direction. From a micro sense, every day is a new horror. Every game is really, really tough. It's sort of like they'll have a game or two where they look great, and then the next two or three games they'll look terrible, and maybe they'll accidentally win one of those games. But it doesn't feel right. They've kind of been on the back foot all season, and it started with the 4-game sweep at home against the Yankees to start the season. And there's no shame in that. The Yankees are a very good team this year, but just ever since then, it sort of feels like they've sort of been like slapped in the face, and they haven't quite gotten up from that. So that's what's going on. I will say there's some reason for optimism, I guess. I mean, the roster is extremely talented still. They have recently gotten rid of one of their players who was dragging the team down quite a bit, which we can talk about later.
Yeah.
But it's just they really need to. Everyone keeps kind of expecting this run to start. Like they're gonna get hot. It's gonna happen. And you see them take 2 of 3 in a series, and then they'll immediately turn around and lose 2 of 3. So they're kind of treading water. And meanwhile, the Mariners are kind of pulling away with the division. So it's been a rough first few months of the year. But I think also we just have to recognize that this is sort of how these things go. You're not going to make the ALCS every single season. It may still happen this year. We don't know, but there's a reason why they are in a rare historical error, because it's very hard to do what they've done, and it's very hard to sustain it too. So that's sort of where we are right now.
Yeah, they kind of became one of the most hated teams for several years because they just kept winning and winning.
Yeah.
And winning.
Right.
Yeah, actually, I have on my notes next thoughts on José Abreu, because he is, this beloved figure on the south side of Chicago. We loved him. He was the RBI merchant. He was, just the leader, the best of the best. And now he's just taken a complete nosedive. And I mean, I hate to say older because I think we're the same age. He might be I think he's like 6 months older than I am.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's about 6 months older than I am. So I hate to say that he's old, but that's probably a factor. And we kind of noticed it. We always said, he's August Abreu. Once it gets really hot, he heats up. But yeah, he's taken a nosedive since he got to Houston. So what went wrong there?
I think, it's Father Time is undefeated, sadly. Interestingly enough, now that we have bat speed metrics that people look at, and I think that's a little bit flawed as a stat, but regardless, everyone thought, okay, his bat speed has slowed down, so that's why he's not catching up to these pitches. And that actually wasn't true. His bat speed is good enough to play at the major league level. It was his timing. So when they released him this past week, that was sort of what the GM Dana Brown said, was that we just couldn't get his timing back. We tried everything, and he was given, every opportunity to get it back. He, much to the disappointment of many Astros fans, but I don't know. What else are you going to do? He has to play to determine if he still can or can't play. So he, as we talked about last year, he started off slow. He did heat up after we talked, and he had a great October, actually. I think he hit something like 5 or 6 home runs in the playoffs. Yeah. So he did really well. And there was a sense that, okay, now he's comfortable, coming into 2024, he's going to be more of the José Abreu that we expect. Obviously, I think people didn't think he was going to be back to his peak levels, but before he came to Houston in 2022, some of his stats were trending upwards. Maybe his power wasn't quite there anymore, but they didn't need him to hit 40 home runs or 30 home runs. They really just needed him to hit about 250 and drive in runs. And he unfortunately couldn't really even do that anymore. So they gave him every shot. They sent him down to minor league, remedial rehab. And he came back up and he just couldn't do it. I don't doubt that if he ends up on another team, maybe it will help. I think the White Sox should consider it. I know they don't really have a lot of first base playing time, but I also don't really know what the harm is. And he's paid for, so he can be signed at the major league minimum. But it's tough. I think they did really like him as a teammate. And there were some quotes coming out about that, about his impact on the clubhouse. But if the Astros were in a better position as a team, you wonder if maybe they would find a way to try to keep him on. But even then, he was hitting something like 130 and had gotten hot to reach that point, and hot meaning 170. So there really just wasn't any time left to waste on getting him back up to speed, unfortunately. So it is dead money. But I think a lot of people, no one would have really expected him to fall off like he did. So it's just kind of unfortunate for all parties. But I am hoping that he lands somewhere else because I think he can probably still play. But, timing, whether it's an age thing or a mental thing, can be fixed. I just think he was very much in his head.
Yeah, and he had all this success on the White Sox, and I wonder if that change of scenery did kind of
It's possible.
play a part in that, just mentally.
Yeah.
I would love, not necessarily as a player, I would love for him to sign like a 1-day contract and just retire.
Yeah, I think that will happen someday.
Yeah.
I think he still wants to play though. So I mean, I think he still wants to play. I don't know.
Or I would even take him as some kind of coach in the
Yeah.
Like I think he has this great leadership, and these younger guys do respect him a lot. Like he could really put some serious work into Andrew Vaughn because he's been so hit or miss.
Yes.
And he just can't quite fill that role that José Abreu had.
Right.
It's just I hope he recovers. I hope he rebounds somewhere great because he deserves it. He's such a good guy.
Yeah, and he probably will. I think it's just a matter of, like I said, if the Astros had a division lead, then they would have the luxury of waiting on him to bounce back. And I think that he's slowly but surely doing that. They just don't have the luxury of time with where they are in the standings. So have to be done.
So speaking of the standings, the Astros are third in the AL West. I have the unpopular opinion that I don't think the Mariners belong in first. And then the Rangers are right there after. So is there any climbing back from that? Especially now that no offense to José, I love him, but kind of drop that dead weight. Is there a way to climb back up now?
It's really interesting. I think the Rangers are sort of hitting a bit of a World Series hangover, and they had a big overperformance from their bullpen and a lot of guys on their team last year. Evan Carter was a huge part of their lineup, and I think has been set down to AAA, or he's hitting like 180. So there's a lot of kind of regression going on. I'm not saying the Rangers aren't here to stay generally, but I think it makes sense that they're not quite as good this year. So I do think, and the Astros have been like a game or two back from them for a couple of weeks. It's just, they really just can't climb in the standings. Like they seriously are just stuck. But the Mariners are making moves. I mean, they're playing really well, but they're doing so in a way that, it doesn't feel sustainable. They have something like the best pitching staff in the league, top 2 or 3 ERA, and then they score like 2 runs a game, which is kind of, for better or for worse, what the Mariners always try to do. I don't know why. I feel like it would be possible to build a lineup that can hit, and we've seen it before when they were really good in 2022. They could score a lot of runs, but for whatever reason, they've chosen to scale that back, rely on their young starters, and that's great. But you wonder if it's kind of like being victims of their own success, because you wonder if after 2 or 3 or 4 months start to pass, all these guys who are throwing 6, 7, 8 innings every game, it starts to wear on their arms. I'm sure they have minor league depth, and they are going to go make a billion trades because they always do. But they may be hot now. Those kind of teams generally sort of fall back to 500. So the Astros are very fortunate this year that they're having the season that they're having in a year where, even though they're 9 games back of the Mariners, it still feels like if they were to have 2 or 3 hot weeks, they'd be right there.
Yeah.
So it's just, we've been waiting on these 2 or 3 hot weeks to happen for the entire season, and they haven't happened yet. So it's a matter of like, yeah, sure, like it's all possible, but like if it doesn't actually happen, then it's not even worth considering as a possibility. But these 2 or 3 hot weeks that I keep talking about, like, this is kind of what needs to happen between now and the trade deadline, because the team can't really decide if they're buyers or sellers. And there's a lot of really important decisions that they sort of need to come to that are determined based on that, decision. Are you trying to contend? Can you contend? Or is it time to try to rebuild for 2025, which I'm personally fine with, but it's just too early to make that decision now.
Well, the good news is you are playing the White Sox for 3 games, and they have only won 19 games as of this recording. Probably going to stay the same by the time you get here. They lucked out last night and they played great baseball, but again, it was Erick Fedde. Erick Fedde is phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
He is one of my favorite pitchers at this moment in time, but they're not good. So I've, kind of made this joke before of they are the team that when your team needs like a boost of confidence to like really just get fired up, you play the White Sox because it happened to the Blue Jays.
Yeah.
Like there was on the broadcast, Steve Stone was talking about how a certain player, he just has not been hitting anything. And then his next at bat, he hits a home run. And I was like, well,
yeah,
there you go. You're welcome, Blue Jays. You're welcome, George Springer. I think that's who it was. So
yeah, I remember.
Oh, it's rough. So who on this Astros team do you feel like you could send to the All-Star game?
To the All-Star game, there's a few guys, and actually there have been a lot of really good individual performances that have sort of been overshadowed by this tough start. Jeremy Pena, the World Series MVP from 2 years ago, has hit really well. I believe he's up to around 300, still playing very good defense. I'm not sure. The fan vote is kind of a joke, as evidenced by the Maldonado movement.
Yeah.
But in terms of like who's deserving to go, I would say Jeremy Pena is in the conversation for sure. Altuve is reaching like Nolan Arenado status where he just sort of gets in every year. And he deserves it again. He's hitting close to 300. So he'll probably get in, but he's not like lighting the world on fire, but it's hard to complain about a guy who's hitting, 290, 300. So Pena and Altuve for sure are caliber of, all-star caliber. And then Kyle Tucker is the other one. He's got 19 homers, which is close to the league lead, but he hasn't played for about a week because he fouled a ball off his leg, which is just like another thing in a long series of unfortunate events of this season. Yordan Alvarez, it's funny, had a terrible month of May, 2 homers and 4 RBIs. And then I just checked his stats before we were talking here, and he's hitting 287, almost a 900 OPS, 14 homers. Like he's kind of back to where, he should be. But he's still kind of climbing out of a slow start. So, I would say those 4 are the position players that probably are most deserving of an all-star nod. The pitchers have been not great. Overall, they have become more consistent, but their season statistics are not excellent, with the exception of Ronel Blanco, who is actually starting today. Ronel Blanco, so you won't see him in the White Sox series, but he is a great story, kind of like an older prospect, one of these guys that the Astros get from, I believe, the Dominican, who just, came up, was a bullpen arm last year, and then they built him up as a starter in AAA. And he came back in his first start of the season. The Astros hadn't won a game yet, by the way. I think they did start 0-4. So this was the first win. It was a no-hitter against the Blue Jays in April. So, and he's continued to be that good. He's honestly, arguably the ace of the staff. So he deserves an all-star nod. He's just put up consistently great numbers, and he's sort of at the forefront of this general move in the Astros rotation to throw more changeups. So you'll definitely see a lot of changeups in the upcoming White Sox series, but they won't obviously be thrown by Ronel Blanco. But he is definitely, I would say, of all the pitchers on the Astros staff, the most deserving of an all-star vote.
Yeah.
Or not, I guess you don't vote for pitchers.
Speaking of pitchers, and this was something I didn't even write in my notes, surprisingly, you've had 4 pitchers go down this year?
Yeah.
And, you've got Justin Verlander. God bless him. He's getting up there in age, so we don't know how long he's going to be good anymore. But you've definitely, yes, the pitching could be a lot better, but it seems like you've made the most of what you do have. But how bad is it, losing, Lance McCullers Jr., Luis Garcia, Kristen Javier? Who else did you lose this year? I don't know. But yeah, you've lost a few.
Jose Urquidy.
That's it.
Yeah, so many of them.
How much has that really just affected how your season is going?
Yeah, I was realizing that I didn't bring that up earlier, because it really did make an impact early in the season, but later on, I mean, the rotation has honestly stabilized. It's a miracle that it's stabilized because they're relying on guys like Spencer Arrighetti, who's a true rookie, Hunter Brown, who was terrible to start the season but is now pitching really well, and I believe will pitch in the White Sox series. But you're just kind of really holding on for dear life. In terms of the injuries, Christian Javier, it was very strange. He had to skip a start because of neck tightness, and then it ended up that he needed Tommy John. So that's strange. Jose Urquidy was coming back from injury, and then he needed Tommy John. And then Luis Garcia and Lance McCullers Jr. have previously gotten Tommy John. So we knew they were going to start the season on the IL, and they're both working their way back. But yeah, basically it was the problem of a lack of depth early in the season with horrible starts that couldn't be covered by anybody else because these guys just had to pitch. Now these guys are pitching and they're pitching well. So it's not so much of that's the issue. It's just more so inconsistent performances from the bats, which come and go, runners in scoring position, the back end of the bullpen imploding like once or twice a week, which when you're fighting for those extra wins, like really hurts. So it has hurt, the lack of rotation depth, but I think the Astros haven't felt the true pain of it just yet because it's stabilized. And for the most part, these guys are all going out there and pitching relatively well, or well enough to sort of right the ship. I do think that they are going to have to be in the market for a starting pitcher. I think Erick Fedde is a great example of a guy they could go get, actually. I know, but I mean, that's what I mean.
I know.
It's what he was signed for. That's I mean, to get a guy out of the KBO and then flip him into some prospects or whatever he'll bring in for the White Sox, that would be, a great return on investment. Especially since he has one more year on his deal, I think. So, they're going to need to do something. They're straight up out of options. Yesterday, Justin Verlander woke up with a sore neck and he missed a start.
Yeah.
So Arrighetti had to slot in, and because of some off days, he was on normal rest, but he was off kilter. He's a rookie, so he gave up 10 runs. So it's just things like that. And I think Verlander will come back. They actually said he might pitch in the White Sox series, which is interesting, but he, it's just things like that they can't really afford. It really kind of highlights how little depth they have that, one skip start from a 41-year-old guy who's pitching perfectly fine, not where his Cy Young level has been, but it just really throws everything off. So they're in a very, very tight situation that they need to sort of get through as we get closer to the trade deadline, because right now they have no leverage at all. With there being so much time between now and August 1st, because teams are just going to ask for all of the prospects that they have. And they probably will still do that on August 1st, but you have to wait it out at least a little bit.
Yeah. Well, we will take a quick break and then kind of get right back into pitching just with the what it's going to look like for this series. So we'll be right back. Unless you're on YouTube, where I'm awkward. All right, we are back, and this time we're here to talk about what this pitching matchup will be at least looking like. I know the White Sox have put their rotation up when I looked just this morning. We start with Jonathan Cannon, who is really just a baby. And he actually has looked really good, but when your team can't back you up, you're going to have a really inflated ERA. His is sitting at 4.56. And then we've got Garrett Crochet, who has been great. Definitely the star of the show right now. And then Chris Flexen, again, has had good outings, but his ERA is very inflated. So it does not show the skill set that he does actually have, because again, he has no one to back him up, no one to get runs, nothing. So the Astros weren't listed, but you thought you had maybe an inkling of who was going to be up. So what can you tell us about who might be up?
Yeah, well, it's all off a day because of the Verlander scratch start on Saturday. So now that Blanco is pitching today, I think it will probably end up being some combination of Hunter Brown, who pitched on Friday. So yeah, he'll be rested at some point during the series. And Verlander, assuming he's healthy. And then Framber Valdez, who hasn't pitched at all in this series. So yeah, he'd probably be slotted in for the first game on Tuesday. If, I don't want to, put pitchers against each other because I don't know what order they're going to pitch in. Like, let's say Verlander pitches Tuesday, then that might bump Framber Valdez back a day. What I can say is, assessing just what the White Sox are bringing to the table, I think they're really going to need to capitalize on the Tuesday and Thursday games. Obviously, Garrett Crochet is very, very good, pitching well, generating a lot of trade interest. So, it's not like the Astros roll over against all elite pitchers, but it just means that game's likely to be lower scoring. But as has been shown many, many, many times this year, as if you knock the White Sox starting pitcher out of the game and the game is close, you have a pretty good chance to win. So, I think that's pretty much all it's going to take. But also, the White Sox have some of that dead cat bounce in them. They swept the Rays earlier this year, split with the Red Sox last weekend. So, it's baseball. Like, anything could happen. It's not a guarantee that if you keep it close, the White Sox bullpen will implode. They're probably due for some positive regression too.
Yeah.
But in terms of what the Astros starters are bringing to the table, I'm hopeful that, a little bit of extra rest will help for Verlander. That usually does for him. Hunter Brown has been awesome recently. He threw 6 shutout innings against the Tigers in his last start, and just generally has been pitching really, really well, which is good because at the beginning of the season he was horrible. But Framber Valdez is the one that you really don't know what you're going to get. I believe his overall numbers are pretty good, but sometimes he'll just go out there and throw a dud, and it will happen every second or third start. So I guess the good news for the Astros is that his last start was a dud. He gave up 5 runs against the Giants, and I want to say like 4 innings, maybe 3 innings. He was not good. But he's liable to go out there and throw 7 innings of 2-run ball. He threw a complete game like 2 starts ago. So it's just a consistency issue where he could be pitching a lot better than he is, but ultimately he's better than anyone else the Astros have, depth wise. So, you really kind of feel good about the rotation overall. Pretty much every day there's someone that you go out there and you are confident in. Spencer Arrighetti is the one who's like kind of the squeaky wheel, but again, he's been pitching great. It was just kind of a spot start yesterday. But yeah, so it's just going to be a matter of, like I said, keeping it close, hoping that the White Sox bullpen, continues to be what they are. Yeah. But if they're not, they're going to have to pounce on these 2 starters on Tuesday and Thursday.
Yeah, I never in my life, as someone who has always been this Michael Kopech apologist, like he was my favorite for the longest time. Yeah. And now it's just like he comes in and I'm like, oh, okay, well, this game was fun while it lasted. This lead was fun while it lasted. Yeah. And it's so disappointed because I think all of us knew what he was coming in. He was very hyped coming in. Yeah. And between injuries and just, I'm not going to blame mental health, but, he set out 2020 for mental health reasons, which great advocate. Like that's one thing he's really doing right is advocating for that. But it's like he comes in and I'm like, okay, well, we're done. And then they just sent Jordan Leisure back. And I'm like, well, he was one that was at least kind of consistent. I don't know what we're doing here anymore.
Yeah.
The bullpen is just atrocious.
Yeah. The White Sox are at a point where I don't really know if any of their roster decisions are geared towards winning or towards further development. They feel like, in Leisure's case, maybe he will get some more, playing time in Charlotte or wherever they sent him. But yeah, it's been tough. I watch a lot of White Sox games. I've been to like 6 this year. And they haven't won any of the ones I've been to, actually. 0-6. But yeah, I mean, and pretty much all of them have gone that way. But I will say, like, Michael Kopech is a very interesting name to some teams that are desperate for pitching.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying the Astros are going to go after him, but there's something in there that can be salvaged, and he is striking out a lot of guys still. So,
yeah,
I mean, throws hard. That's kind of all it takes nowadays.
I mean, if he has a handle on it and is throwing hard, he's unhittable. But he's a little wily, and you get a little nervous. I mean, it's going 100 miles per hour, but it's going everywhere but the plate,
Yeah.
But I do think under better direction, he could be what he was advertised as. I think Ethan Katz is just, he's had his time. He didn't really fix enough people. Like, I guess he kind of fixed Dylan Cease, but Cease isn't here anymore to reap those benefits. So I think he's done more damage. All of these players that have since left the White Sox are wonderful. Ronaldo Lopez is like one of the best in the league right now. For Atlanta, who, we thought, their season is over once Strider went down. But no, we've got Raylo just pitching night after night with like the lowest ERA right now. And then Cease is doing phenomenal on the Padres. Like, we're just seeing all of these players, like even Chris Sale, I felt like was great on every other team. Like, he's doing great right now in Atlanta. He was been healthy, great in Boston. So it's like, did we actually lose that trade that looked like at one point was a good, solid, even trade? Now looking back, I'm like, we lost that trade.
Yeah, it happens. I mean, I feel like, wasn't he Lucas Giolito's high school pitching coach, and now Lucas Giolito's not on the team anymore? So,
and I'm sorry, but he didn't do great with Lucas.
Yeah, he didn't at times, but not consistently. Yeah,
he threw a no-hitter, and then it was just like, okay, well, we're done. Yeah. We're not going to have any more good years, which sucks. But yeah, I think it's his time to move on.
Probably.
But they're not good at hiring anyone, so
that is something they struggle with.
It's just bad.
Yeah.
All right, let's move away from me being depressed about the pitching situation in Chicago.
Sure.
Which player on this team do you feel like is the biggest threat right now to the White Sox?
Well, it depends if Kyle Tucker plays in this series. They had to put him on the injured list. He was technically eligible to come back on Friday, but he didn't because he just took a really bad bruise with the foul ball off his leg. So if he comes back, then I would say it's him. I kind of don't think he will. I think they're going to send him to AAA for a rehab assignment or something because it's just been long enough that he needs to get some at-bats. So I would say it's probably Yordan Alvarez in the case that Tucker is not playing. He's been heating up for sure. I think I don't have stats on this, but I feel like every time I've seen him play at the White Sox Stadium, he tends to hit well there. It's like a good place for left-handed hitters to hit. Seems like a good place to hit generally, but I know the park factor is kind of neutral just because the outfield wall is so low.
Yeah.
And it's like kind of the same, it's equidistant to right and left. But yeah, I would say, Alvarez is probably the one that if the Astros want to do what they need to do in this series, which frankly is to win all 3 games, he needs to hit well because the entire lineup is pitched to differently when he's hot. When he's hot, he's essentially pitched to like Aaron Judge or like peak Barry Bonds. Like they do not pitch to him, and they either put him on base or they have to challenge him because someone's protecting him in the 4 spot that they don't want to deal with. So when he's not hitting well, he's just another bat in the lineup that you can go get. And in that case, for whatever reason, there's a ripple effect on the entire team. When he is hitting well, he's the one driving in runs. He's giving you those 2 or 3 runs a game, either just by making solid contact, productive outs, or driving in guys with runners on. So I mean, if the Astros want to do literally anything of note this year, he has to be better than he is, which he's already been pretty good overall, like I was saying earlier. But yeah, I would say he's the one who's the biggest threat.
That's fair. He's usually the one I'm most afraid of when playing them. I mean, he's great against anybody. He's just scary good sometimes.
Yeah.
So with the keys for the Astros to take this series, do they have some? I mean, what do you feel like they really need to do to take all three?
They just have to limit mental mistakes. There's been a lot of situations this year where they've lost one-run games just with the silliest stuff. And their record in one-run games is, I think, it's either 5-13 or 5-14, which is really bad. I think that's about the same as the White Sox record in one-run games, which you don't want to be sharing statistics with the White Sox right now. But it's just like some of it is, you may have noticed that I didn't put any blame or, point fingers at our first-year manager, Joe Espada, who has done an okay job, but he has at times struggled to manage the bullpen and has kind of put his team in a hole where they've sort of, in a way, had no choice but to lose a certain game because of how their bullpen had been managed in the previous two games, which is not good. You don't want to be doing that. So managing the bullpen, just getting the little things right. I think in previous seasons, we've seen the Astros sometimes play down to competition when teams aren't very good, but they'll just for whatever reason not kind of show up and play. And this goes for even the best Astros teams that have come and gone over the last several years. Like even in the World Series, the last World Series year, they got swept by the A's at one point, who were terrible that season. So it's totally possible, but their sense of urgency should be extremely high. I say that every single day and nothing changes, but it remains the same. It remains true. So yeah, they just have to get the little things right. They have to pitch well. They have to hit with runners in scoring position, because if they don't do that, then the games will be close. And when the games are close, obviously it could go either way. Now with two teams that struggle to win one-run games, someone will have to win. Yeah. So we'll see. But it's just that they should avoid that as much as possible. Score early, put the game away. I really think scoring in the first, second, or third innings will be very important in this series, because I think as soon as they start messing around with close games, and the White Sox are as bad as they are, they're feisty, like they'll play. Yeah. And like they could win. Like the Astros are extremely capable of losing 2 or even 3 games if they don't show up, just like any other major league team would. And I think it's just a matter of just focusing and executing all the fundamentals and hitting with runners in scoring position, because there's been a lot of inconsistencies with all of that this season, and that's why they are where they are.
Would you say just these mental errors in general are kind of your fear when you head into the series, or are you just afraid of Paul DeJong right now, who is right?
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, it's really just that. It feels like it's one misplay that may snowball. And the thing is that, again, if you look at the season as a whole, it's not like they're fielding poorly. It's not like they're getting thrown out on the bases all the time. It just seems to happen in the most inopportune moments. That is why you lose a one-run game. Things like that. It snowballs. So yeah, I mean, I guess my biggest fear would just be that they fail to take the game, under control. And when they sort of lose control of the game and the game flow, that's when they tend to lose. Previous seasons, they have been able to bounce back from that. If for whatever reason, a team comes back in the 7th inning on them, and then they have to, fight back a little bit. This year, for whatever reason, it just has not been the case. I think they only have like 1 or 2 wins when they're trailing after the 7th or 8th inning, which most teams lose those games, yes, but just like their record is something really, really bad. So it's just a matter of controlling the game, doing what you have to do. And I just haven't seen that enough to feel secure that will happen. So yes, I would say that's my biggest fear, that they just kind of let things get out of control.
That's fair. That's always my fear every single game I go into with this team.
Yes.
Before we wrap up, I always like to get the opinion on just the season in general, not necessarily the Astros season, but just how you're feeling about this year, or teams that you think are gonna make it, or even just really crazy hot takes. Just lay them on me.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a weird season, sort of like last year was a bit of a weird season. Everyone's sort of floating around slightly above where the Astros are. The Astros have the 25th worst record in Major League Baseball, which is crazy. But the distance between them and like number 10 is like 3 or 4 games.
Yeah.
People hate that the for the National League, for instance, like there's only like 4 teams over 500, and people hate that because it's like, oh, the owners are content to just scrape into the playoffs with 82 wins. I'm like, that may be true, but also these things have happened in baseball before. You saw the 2006 Cardinals, which won the World Series with 83 wins. So I think that's kind of cool. I like that about baseball. I like that, there can be seasons where no one seems like they're any good, and then someone sort of emerges from the pack. And I sort of see that happening again this year. We have seen that in the last few years too. I mean, with the Phillies and the Braves and the D-backs, out of the National League anyway. The American League has been a little bit more controlled because the Astros have been one of the 2 teams in the ALCS for a long time. So it's a little less wide open. But I think that's a good thing for baseball. And you still have your powerhouses. I mean, the Yankees and the Dodgers are playing great. But, when I see teams like the Guardians and the Royals, who are both having really, really good seasons, gives me some hope that, something interesting might happen in the playoffs or leading up to the playoffs. I mean, it's very hard for me to predict. I'm not even sure. I mean, if you ask me like who my World Series favorite is right now, I would probably say it's the Yankees. But
yeah,
do we really even think the Yankees are going to make it to the World Series? Like, just given their track record and how things always tend to go wrong for them? Like, no, I just don't think so. Something will happen. So I think we're all just kind of waiting for some big like groundswell moment to like kind of define this season, and it just hasn't happened yet. I guess other than, I guess you could say the Guardians are playing awesome. And like I said, the Royals are playing awesome. And like, that's really cool, but we're still not even halfway done. Yeah. So I feel like once we sort of hit July, someone will emerge as like an MVP candidate that we didn't see coming, or some team will get incredibly hot and win like 20 of 25 games. I don't know who that's going to be. And it could be literally any of these teams. So not to carry water for Rob Manfred, which I will never do. But if the goal was to create a competitive field, then the goal has been achieved. The field is very competitive.
Yeah.
The bad teams are still way, way, way below the field, which I wish was not the case, but you're kind of always going to have. But yeah, it's just I think we're all just sort of waiting, and it should be a very interesting second half of the season, especially when the trades start moving. The White Sox are holding on to a lot of talent that could be used elsewhere. I'm not saying they should get rid of Crochet and Luis Robert. I think they should probably hold on to one of those guys, if they have any intention to be good soon, which they say they do. But like there's a lot of talent that's on these, very few selling teams that could really shift any of these races in any direction. So I think as we get closer to July, things will start to shake out a little bit more. But, it's all just kind of still in flux, which is crazy to stay still in mid-June, but that's where we are right now. So I guess those are my hot takes.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I love what you said about the Yankees, because they are so scary right now.
Yeah.
But am I going to stay scared of those Yankees in September? Probably not.
Yeah, they tend to do this.
Yeah, you can't be consistently hot all year. That's just not going to happen. Again, we saw it with the Diamondbacks last year. They made the World Series, but at the beginning of the year, I would have never said, yeah, the Diamondbacks are going to go.
Right. And I mean, the Yankees, sure. I mean, but you saw this 2 years ago, also in 2022. They started off incredibly hot, and then one thing led to another. And I still think they're unfortunate, and I hate to say this, but they're again one Aaron Judge injury away from being in big trouble. I mean, their lineup is better, but they're again seeing overperformance from a lot of guys. Anthony Volpe has been really good. Juan Soto's of course been awesome, but when he got hurt, all of a sudden the lineup is totally different.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying, well, I hope these guys don't get hurt because whatever, but like it's baseball. It's really it's brutal on the body, and the Yankees have had a ton of bad injury luck over the last several years. So until that doesn't happen again, I'm kind of expecting it to happen again.
Yeah, but at the same time, they are getting Garrett Cole back.
They are
soon.
They
already have this. I mean, it's bad when Nestor Cortez is your worst starter on the team.
Yeah. No, I mean, they've got plenty of guys. It's just, let's see where they are in August and September, and then we can assess.
Yeah, for sure. I'm honestly kind of pulling for the Phillies right now.
Yeah, they're fun to watch.
Take it far. Their content from their London series was hilarious.
Yeah, it was great.
Completely for the ridiculousness. Although now the Mets are heating up because they realized that it's Pride Month and they need to show up. They've got Grimace helping them.
Yeah, Grimace has been big for them. A big factor in their success. I think that's something that a lot of the other teams should be looking into very soon.
You need to either make your profile picture a rainbow, which the White Sox haven't done. They are focused on gun safety,
They're the
which is
holdouts.
kind of a joke right now. A gun went off in the stadium last year. And we still don't know what happened. But yeah, you just have to.
They have their best men on it, I'm sure.
They do. Yeah, you just have to just be open about being gay, and even they lost Mark Canha, who was very, very excited to.
Yeah, he's a big
advocate.
He's an ally.
So yeah, I guess just hire the Hamburglar or something, maybe any of those old McDonald's mascots, and you'll win big.
Yeah.
So the Mets aren't going anywhere. It's going to end in June, but it's okay. All right. Well, that is all I have for you. So thank you again for coming on. Please let everyone know where they can find you.
Yeah, sure. So I'm on Twitter at 1 ear open. It's all one word. You don't have to follow that. That's fine. I'm not promoting that widely, but I do have a blog. It's called All Blogs Go to Heaven. It's about baseball in the Chicago area, kind of just broadly, that the non-major league teams that play in the Chicago area. So, independent, college teams, the teams that you don't really hear about because they play, either in the middle of the summer when the Sox and Cubs are playing, or in March and April when no one wants to go outside. Yeah. So yeah, allblogsgotoheaven.substack.com. I try to put something up there once a month. It's very not serious, but yeah, it's fun if you want to check it out.
Do you post anything about the Chicago Dogs?
Yes. Yeah, that's sort of the genesis of the blog was my friend and I got really into the Chicago Dogs, and I'm still really into the Chicago Dogs. Yeah. They're a very fun team to follow. It's just very different being a fan of an independent league team because they've changed 90% of their roster this year. And I still don't know any of the guys. So it's been very weird to look at a box score and not know any names. That's sort of what this blog is for, to just kind of be sort of a crash course in what indie league baseball is and how to follow it. Cause it's very different than, checking in on the Sox every day, for example. Yeah. So it's just fun.
We were just at a Chicago Dogs game last week. Yeah, last week.
Cool.
We sat in front of a player's family, and there was a very new baby and a toddler. And that toddler was just the cutest. And he's still learning his words, but he can name these players. He'd be like, Johnny Turbo, Johnny Turbo, Johnny Turbo. And then one of the players, one of the players had him come down because we were pretty close. We were right in front of their dugout. And one of the players had him come down, gave him his batting glove, and he was freaking out about that. He was the cutest, and his dad would wave at him every single time. And I'm this is precious. This is why I love this kind of baseball league and how family they are, and just they're fun. And they were great last year.
Yeah, they went to the championship. Who's to say if they do again, because they have an entirely new team, but they it's fun. It's very family friendly place, and they also have $2 beer nights for the non-family friendly folks.
Yes, we are like 5 minutes away from Impact Field, so
awesome.
Love to go to those games.
Yeah.
All right, shameless promotion for the Dogs. Go see them if you are in the Chicagoland area.
Yes.
You might see one of us there. Who knows? All right. Well, thank you again, Andy. Best of luck in the series.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I'll be there Tuesday and Wednesday night. If you see a bald head in an Astros jersey, that's me. So come talk trash if you want.
We don't have any trash to talk. But thank you for the offer. All right. Well,
yes.
Great talking to you. See you later.
Yeah. Thanks.
Bye.